Moving on to the bigger issue at hand that the NGCP is facing, is the involvement, the stake of the Chinese firm, State Grid Corporation of China, that owns 40% of NGCP, which ironically the issues come out today, but they actually won this franchise in 2008 under former President Arroyo and started operating in 2009. So I'll start first with the fear. Can China really remotely shut down operations if it wants to? Can they shut down power if they want to?
No.
Clarify that, because you do have different opinions on this. No less than Transco confirmed that China has the capability to remotely switch off the power grid in the Philippines. So when you say no, and Transco says yes, and Alfonso Cusi says yes, the Secretary of the DOE, who is telling the truth? What do you mean by no?
With all due respect to the government officials who've made statements on this, there is simply no way this can be done remotely. Number one, there is no proverbial Wile E. Coyote Acme red button that you can press to shut down the grid. We have over 200 substations all over the country, and if you want to quote-unquote shut down the grid, you have to manually close each breaker in each substation. So that is not possible. Second, our SCADA system, which is the software that runs the grid, it is standalone. It is at no point in time connected to the VPN or the virtual private network. However, as Mr. Almeida, our president, has explained previously in his statements, we can grant remote access to the supplier if there are any repairs that need to be done, but not to the SCADA production system, which is where the control happens, but only to what they call a test environment. A test environment mimics your grid operations, and that's where the supplier can check what's wrong with it, propose solutions, and once they've found the solution, they will hand over these solutions to the Philippine engineers, NGCP Filipino engineers, and it is these qualified Filipino NGCP engineers which will implement those solutions in the SCADA. So at no time will the main production system of SCADA have access to the VPN.
So we're talking about 200 substations.
Yes.
And hypothetically, to let's say shut down power in the whole grid, what would it take?
You would have to call 200, at the very least 200 substation managers and have them shut off several breakers in each of these substations one by one.
Okay.
So it's not one button and it's not remote. It has to be done manually.
China cannot order, because the fear is, when you're reading all these articles, is because China has a 40% stake. Is you can have China suddenly say, you know what, shut it down. And because of the 40% stake and perceived involvement of Chinese experts in the NGCP, is they'll follow orders coming from China.
Well, it's simple math. 60 trumps 40. So if you have a 40% stake, you're in the minority. The control still remains with the Filipino stockholders at 60%, which is precisely one of the safeguards found in the Constitution. This is exactly why public utilities such as NGCP must remain Filipino.
Okay. Now, so where do you think is this coming from? I mean, you're a lawyer, you're with NGCP. What's surprising is the stake of China has been there since 2008. It slipped through everyone. It wasn't big news, except in 2015 there was a bit of a ruckus. We'll go to that later. But now the fears are escalated.
To be honest,
so it's like 10 years, 11 years.
It also baffles me why this is all coming out just right now. Number one, the China stake in NGCP, this is not a negotiated deal. This was done in open public bidding. Second, the requirement for a foreign technical partner is not something that was demanded by any of the bidders. It was actually found in the law, the EPIRA, the RA 9136. They required a technical partner because the idea of privatization was to have someone come in and improve the grid, do the investments and do the technological transfer to ensure that the grid in this archipelago can, they can raise the bar of the technology. But then, the lawmakers were thinking, the idea was there was only one technical expert for transmission. So naturally, you had to look elsewhere. And the fact that it went on an open bidding process means that it could have been anyone. It just so happened that the best financial bid belonged to the consortium that had a partnership with China.
Okay. Does it matter, will it matter that, of course, China as a country owns the State Grid Corporation, which they own, they have a stake in mostly everything in China?
Actually, the Philippines isn't the only country where the State Grid of China has an interest in. In Australia, they actually own 61% of a company that operates the transmission assets. They own a 41% in the one that runs the grid. So, if it's not as if we're being pinpointed or we're being targeted, those accusations and insinuations are just baseless.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the role of the State Grid Corporation of China. Maybe you can set the record straight, okay? How many Chinese personnel work with NGCP representing the State Grid Corporation? Do you have any?
We have 4 board directors. Because they are investors, they are entitled to board seats. And the board seats that they have been given are commensurate to their investment. So we have 10 board members, 40% stake in China, so they have 4 board members, and that's it.
That's it. What about technical experts on the ground or
None that
in
are,
management?
No, none.
Okay.
I remember there was an insinuation that there were Chinese engineers.
Yes, I wanted to ask you that
Yeah.
because the report is in 2015, even before the Duterte administration. This would still be former President Aquino. The Philippine government didn't renew the work visas of 18 Chinese experts employed by NGCP out of security concerns. Is that true?
If there were visas that were not renewed, then they are not in NGCP. But for so long as they had a visa, they were able to work in a consultant capacity, because how can they improve the grid if they don't understand it? But right now, we follow the laws and the rules and regulations. If we wanted to have a Chinese consultant, they must comply with the requirements of having a visa. If they don't have a visa, they're not here.
Okay. So do you have Chinese experts in the country today with NGCP?
Just the 3 board directors
That's
with
it?
the visas.
You said 3 or 4? 4.
The 4th one is not here.
Okay.
Yes. So there are 3 here, and they have duly issued visas.
Yes. So maybe perhaps this one you can clarify. There are no Chinese experts, technicians with NGCP working in the lines, nothing like that.
No. Which is why it was very important for us the other day to reopen. Actually, we're very open. We invited several, over the years, we have had several Department of Energy secretaries. We've had several heads of the Energy Regulatory Commission. We've had senators.
Yeah.
We've had congressmen visit us, because there's really nothing to hide.
Okay, the news that the Department of Energy ordered a visit of the facility. Is it the first time this visit has happened, or frankly speaking, have they really been visiting?
No, it isn't the first time they've been there. In fact, yesterday, there was a newly installed Yusek Juanesa, who went to NGCP with very little notice, actually. And we showed him our command center for the typhoon. We gave him a briefing, and then we invited him to go over to the system operations, because the command center is only viewing. So where the actual operations happened, we invited him over. But thankfully, he recognized that the criticality of the time, considering Tisoy is here, he declined. But even prior to that, we have had several visits, including Secretary Cusi and including Mr. Matibag. They have been to our facilities.
Okay.
Yes, so it's not like a closed facility.
Our reports come out, it's been printed on the role of China with the NGCP. And in that report, it says that Chinese engineers have access to what they call key elements of the system, and power could be deactivated remotely just by Beijing's orders. You said orders, no.
Yeah.
Remotely, no.
No.
But do they have access to key elements of the system?
Well, first of all, it's very difficult to define what a key element is, but definitely the day-to-day controls, the access to what can actually affect the system, this belongs to Filipinos. Like me, I'm from NGCP. I have very limited access to all these areas. Just because you're from NGCP doesn't mean you can enter all these restricted areas. Because you have to understand that the control center is where we balance electricity, and that's a very delicate process. So that, we have to make sure that it's controlled, and anyone who wants to enter, be they Filipino, Chinese, if they don't have the clearances, and
who gives the clearance?
The clearances will have to go through our security group, and that is they are answerable to our president, Mr. Almeida. So if you write us, if you tell us what you want to do, and if we feel that this will not be disruptive of the operations, then and if you go through the security processes, like if you bring a camera, we have to check that. We need to know why you're there, we need to know who you are, then, we can show you what the operations are. But it's not like a 7-Eleven where, if you want to buy a can of soft drinks, you can just walk in. There has to be some level of security, a great level of security, because this is a very critical facility.
Okay, should there be any concern, the report also says that the technology of NGCP has increasingly been switched to products of Huawei, which was flagged by the DFA, and as we know, Huawei is banned in several countries as well from building their own 5G networks. Have you really switched? Have a lot of your products been switched to Huawei?
NGCP's procurement policy is one that is competitive. We have to do open public bidding on all our procurement. Our procurement policy, because if you remember, NGCP's operations used to be run by the government. So our procurement policy is loosely based on the government procurement policy. But of course, we tweak it to make sure that we get the best price for the best product. So there is no specific coordinated effort to go Huawei.
Yeah, but are most of your products been switched to Huawei? Is that even accurate?
There are most, maybe not. If there are any Huawei products within NGCP, it was the result of a public bidding.
Okay.
But I do know that given the declaration of some, we are making an effort to check the equipment and ensure that they are secure.
Okay. Can NGCP assure that Huawei will not be used in any way or will not be a concern? Will not be a security concern for the Philippines?
I can assure that it will not be a security concern because it's difficult for you to take my word for it. It's self-serving. But what we can show everyone is that we do have a certification from TUV Rhineland, a German company, not a Chinese company, a German company that says we have passed the standards that they have set for grid management, grid security, and transmission services, among others.
Okay.
So this is a third party already saying...
para kayo may third party audit.
Yes,
that's a good one.
So there's something...
That will help.
A German company that says, they're secure, they're running it the way they're supposed to do so, up to standard, up to our international standards. So if you can't take our word for it, then the certification ought to hold some weight.
Okay. No less than former Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio has said our national security will be compromised because control and proprietary access was given already to the State Grid Corporation. Okay, let's start first with that. Control, you've answered. What about proprietary access?
Again, like any other supplier agreement, the Filipino engineers must be trained in the systems that we implement. So, like I said, the SCADA system is standalone. We're the only ones who operate it. Our engineers are trained in whatever proprietary systems have been put in place. They do have the test environment to make sure that they can troubleshoot, but the control and the access to that system belongs to trained engineers who have trained with the systems that are proprietary in nature.
You have lawmakers already stating concerns. You have former DILG Secretary Rafi Alunan. You have former Senior Associate Justice Carpio. Senator Recto just recently gave his own opinion on the matter. I wanted to ask you, to allay people's fears, yes, you are speaking. Is it even possible to cancel this contract? Because this is what I wanted to ask. What I've read is NGCP, you hold a 25-year concession contract, and you have a 50-year franchise to operate. Right. Okay, so let's start with that. Legally speaking, with all these fears that are out there, can the State Grid Corporation's contract even be frankly canceled?
Well, a contract, most contracts have provisions for cancellation. But like any contract, before you can legally cancel them, they have to meet certain conditions.
Why?
For everyone's
reasons why, of course.
Even NGCP can invoke several provisions of the concession agreement to cancel if they feel that there are several provisions that have not been met. So these are mutual provisions that are common in contract.